Welcome to the I Got Fired podcast for people who've been fired or afraid they might be. I am thrilled today to be joined by Dawn Rasmussen, who is a certified resume writer. She's the president of the Portland, Oregon-based Pathfinder Writing and Career Services. She is also the author of the book, Forget Job Security, Build Your Marketability, which is the first ever book that provides a complete roadmap on how to manage your career. She helps clients and conferences attendees think about their careers differently by pushing their envelope in a good way, which is the first step in the journey where job seekers and employees begin to actively manage their careers. So welcome, Dawn.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So before we get started, the particulars of the work you do for folks who are looking for a career, I saw on your bio that you are a fawn foster mom. That's right. You had a fawn appear in your yard. So tell me about that. I got to hear this story.
Oh, well, For the Deers, our pandemic project, his mom apparently died. We live out in about 5 acres, and my husband was out in the yard, and a little fawn came up to him and was crying, and he was about a day old, and we ended up taking him to the vet, and the vet said, yeah, he's abandoned, but here you go, we don't have space. So presto, we were instant deer parents. So I ended up writing a book about it, but it's he's on Facebook and TikTok, and so I try to update every day little things that are going on with him. He's now 3 years old and got antlers and everything. So
that is awesome. So what's the book?
It's a kid's book called Mighty Little Thor, A Fawn Lost and Found. And so it's on Amazon if people want to check it out. But it's social emotional learning, and it just talks about the life of Thor. Most people don't realize, we see deer all the time, but what are their lives really like? And I got firsthand experience with that. So it was pretty awesome. And he's not wild. I mean, he's not a pet. He's wild. So he'll be gone for a month, and he'll come back and come say hi to me. So it's kind of cute.
That's great. So you have other animals, I take it?
We don't have any other animals on our property. I have 2 cats that are indoor only, but Thor's out there somewhere, and he shows up, and we say hello, and then he's off again. So
so the cats have not met Thor then, I take it.
They did when he was tiny. Yeah, I had him in the house for like the first week when he was a baby, and then we got Thor outside as soon as possible, just so that he could be out in the wild. So
Sure. Well, that's a fantastic story. I look forward to checking out the book. And you said YouTube and Facebook. I'll be checking out the social media channels as well.
TikTok and Instagram, you name it, he's out there. So
hey, Thor is a famous deer. That's fantastic.
He is.
All right. Well, shifting into what we're going to be talking about on the podcast today, and that is basically career services broadly. Frankly, for somebody who represents people who are facing a career crisis, even I was not completely aware of the various different kinds of services out there. Like I think I knew what a career coach was. I knew there were people that will help with a resume. So tell me a little just about your field generally, what people do, what you do, and we'll go from there.
Well, I will just kind of put you're a lawyer, so I can say this too, the disclaimer that there are a lot of folks that hang out their shingle out there on the internet that say that they're a resume writer, but they end up doing really shoddy work. So I think if anybody's going to look for any kind of assistance for either career planning or management or coaching or just resume writing, look for a professional association, because those people that join those organizations are going to be most committed to their craft. They are committed professionals. So, I also coach people to look online and see what else is out there. If this is someone who has virtually no digital footprint, then they're probably not quite as qualified as they say they are. So,
yeah, I know. I'm sure that's true.
One thing I try to educate people on too is that understanding kind of the difference between a career coach, and then a resume writer. So the career coach is going to help someone figure out, if not this, then where do you want to go? So it's kind of doing that career exploration process, and then understanding, what your interests are, your skills, your abilities, and your knowledge, and what kinds of applicable fields can you go in. So you have to have that clarity before you come to a resume writer, because the way resumes are written nowadays, especially with all the hiring software that scans your resume, you have to have a concentrated focus, and that gets the right amount and density of keywords into your resume that will get you through those systems. So you have to tell the resume writer where you want to go first before they can go to work for you. And then a lot of folks that are in this field also are, can help you with job search coaching, interview coaching, salary coaching, and they also do all kinds of things like your resume, your profile, your LinkedIn profile, cover letters, bios, and all that kind of stuff. So I think it just varies. You'll even see difference in sizes as far as the firm that if you're looking at them, they could be a one person shop. That's me. There's other folks that have a whole team of writers. So just make sure you're not getting into a mill situation where people are just churning out templates. This is a very personal journey. So I always tell people, make sure you feel comfortable with that writer or that coach so that you better understand how you're going to relate to that person. They're going to interpret your life journey to this point. So but yeah, just looking at professional organizations, like there's the International Coaching Federation for career coaching, the National Resume Writers Association for resume writing and such. So just do a little bit of due diligence, as you say in the legal field.
Right. So for example, like if I am thinking about completely retooling my career, I might want to start with a career coach, right? Who's going to talk me through that and help me think through that. But then if I am staying within my field, let's say I'm an accountant and I've gotten fired or I'm getting laid off and I want to stay as an accountant, and I might go directly to the resume writer. If what I want is just somebody to help me to find that new, better job,
right?
I'd go to, yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
And I guess there are people who do both. Do you do both, or
Yeah, okay. There are some that do both. So, generally, that would be pretty much revealed on their website that discusses what types of services they offer. But generally, there are pretty much, if you're going to be working with a dedicated career professional, they have certifications and things that they've gone through to enhance their own knowledge and ability to help the person who's needing some assistance. So they have outlined all that. So that's their focus. But, there are career coaches that do resumes, and there's resume writers that help with career coaching. So just part of your research and whatnot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, tell me about your book, the Forget Job Security, Build Your Marketability, something that I'd just like to hear more about. Tell me about that.
Well, it kind of started with the whole Great Recession, and one thing I kept hearing from people over and over and over again, they were saying, "I can't believe they let me go. We were like family. I stayed late. I came in early. I gave them my firstborn child, kind of thing. And how could they let me go? I loved them and they loved me." And I think it just became very clear to me that people were not thinking in terms of any kind of employment, that it is a contract, and you're only there as long as you provide value to the employer, and you're only there as long as you feel like they're actually providing you compensation that matches whatever you're providing. So does that make sense? So it's kind of a tricky process.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So yeah. So, and the other part is a lot of people got really kind of complacent, I'd like to say, in their careers that, it's like, well, I know I'm doing a good job. Everything's going great. So I don't really need to think about enhancing my skill sets or whatever. So then when the axe did come down, they realized they were actually really farther behind other candidates applying for the same job. So my point with Forget Job Security, there is no such thing as job security. Your marketability is really what it's all about, because really you have to be able to keep making yourself valuable. And part of that conversation is getting the current professional development, making sure your network's nice and strong, raising your profile, and really keeping track of your accomplishments. That's where a lot of people don't do a good job on when they're try to write their resume. They can't even remember what they did 5 minutes ago, let alone 5 years ago. So I always tell them that they should really keep track of what they're doing, because either if the unthinkable happens, like they get laid off or fired or whatever, or on the flip side, it could be an opportunity lands in their lap, or maybe they're being considered for promotion. You got to have clarity and be up to speed with your own accomplishments, because nobody else is keeping track of that. You have to do that. That's where you have to own your own power as far as your job security. There isn't any. It's your marketability. That's where you need to put your money down, your efforts on.
Right. So, it would probably be best practices. Like to go see somebody like you before, right? Even if you're not worried about getting fired, right? Yeah. Because if you can have all that up to date, all that ready to go, you're just that much stronger in the job environment, so if something does happen, then you're like, okay, next.
I'm ready to
I'm
hit
on
the
to my
ground
next
running.
thing.
Yeah, there's no lag time there. So,
Yeah,
and
right,
just
right.
really, if you can also think about when you're keeping track of your accomplishments, think in terms of how you've been a profit center, not a cost center. How have you helped? How have you made a difference? How have you moved the needle? This isn't about chest beating and saying, well, I did this, it's more like, here's how you helped. And if you change that conversation in your head, it becomes a lot easier to speak about this in terms of how did the company end up benefiting from you helping them. And that's what employers who are going to be maybe looking at your resume want to know. It's like, well, what did you do at the previous company, so they can make a decision of what you might be able to do for them.
Yeah, yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's say, I haven't been in the job market for 5 years. I haven't done the things that you've said. I haven't kept up with my accomplishments, and I get fired. I come to you. Like, what sort of things do I need to be thinking about? Kind of first steps.
Well, I'm kind of like a surgeon, so let's go in and find out where if there's certain things we need to operate on, and usually it depends on where in the quote firing stage they are. If they're already left the company, that's one thing, but if they're still there, maybe they've been given a 2-week notice or something like that. Then that's where you do need to try to get some numbers for some of your accomplishments while you still have access to that information. But if you don't, then I always tell people, try to start thinking about what are those on the job wins, because being fired or being laid off is one of the most ego shattering experiences anybody can go through. We put so much of our personal image and invest so much of our time in the workplace and cultivating an image. And, this is the kind of worker I am, and to have your identity basically yanked away from you, it's very demoralizing. So actually going through the resume writing process can help rebuild some of that confidence, because like, yeah, I did do a lot there. I did have an impact, even though it may not have ended in, preferably, but it's a way to see and show that value. And if you can own that and share it, then that's where another employer is going to see that. So it's really kind of going in and diagnosing what can we play with in terms of your wins, and then how can we kind of pitch and tell that story. It's kind of like the storytelling messaging part of it. And
Right.
so it's a lot of talking about people about where, what kinds of things they do in the job that's relevant to where they want to go.
Yeah, I know that I could see that. And then what is different just in terms of kind of the social media landscape? Obviously, LinkedIn is big and has been for a little while, but like, what do I need to be thinking about in terms of my social media profile? And is LinkedIn kind of the ball game, or am I looking at other places too?
That's a really great question. I would say LinkedIn is probably still the go-to professional platform. There's certainly other ones kind of floating around there, but you should think holistically about what does your overall digital footprint say about you. If you're all nicey on LinkedIn and professional, and then if someone does a search, and there's certainly tools out there that can kind of x-ray through settings and see what you're saying on Facebook that could reveal a different personality, so you end up having Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. You should be really thinking about trying to clean that up, and there are tools to help you do that as well. But for the most part, you got to think about, is it your comments? Some of these avatars and software cookies will track what you say on each website. So it could be that you're sprinkling your influence out there. And again, that could be an aggregate algorithm that someone could dig up stuff about, oh, this person's really a troll and that kind of thing. Or it comes out later on that, that comment they said blows up on social media. I can't remember. There was one gal, it was like I was watching it live time, that she was flying. She said some really offensive thing, and she was flying overseas and had her phone turned off. I don't know if you remember this, but she had her phone turned off. And by the time she landed, she was a social media pariah. And it was, I can't remember, whatever it was just something horrifically insensitive, tone deaf, and very offensive. And people were just like talking about her. It's like she has no clue what's going to happen when she turns on her phone and when she lands. And it was just like she got fired. It's
Oh my God, I know.
Nobody wanted to have her on their team because of what she said, and now it was like pointing all the arrows towards that company, and the company didn't want that liability either. So that's a pretty dramatic example. But when we talk about kind of the steak and potatoes mainstay of job searching, LinkedIn is still king for now. and they keep adding and new features and things like that. It's a really great platform. And so one of the things if I could just interject about this too, people always assume
Sure.
it's an easy thing to kind of copy and paste your profile, your resume onto your LinkedIn profile, and that's not how you do it. LinkedIn's social media, so it's a way to communicate your chemistry and culture fit with the reader. So it needs to take more of a conversational tone. You definitely want to port over your wins from your resume so people can see what you've done on the job. And there are positions that are only available on LinkedIn to apply to, but so you definitely want those wins, but you really need to take more of that conversational tone, like I said. So it's a little bit of business and it was mostly business and a little dash of personality in there. So it's still
Right.
the top one to go to.
Yeah. So it's not. I think that's well said. It's not just your resume, online. It's more of your 3D version of you, and yeah. So if I am, let's say I'm transitioning jobs, or I've been fired, I haven't been in the market for 5 years. What do I need to know about? I mean, you kind of alluded to this earlier about how AI and how companies are using these programs to screen resumes. Like, what do I need to know about that? What kind of strategies do you recommend to help people maximize? Let's say they know what kind of job they want, to maximize their chance of getting that job.
Well, in order to maximize your opportunity, and it's not so much getting the job, it's getting the interview, then it's up to them to get the job. But I always like to do kind of
Yeah,
split
right.
But so it's all about keywords. So keyword optimization, search engine optimization is kind of the same concept. And so the idea behind that, and there's software that companies use to parse people's resumes. So what they do is they take the job description, dump it into their software, and set up a predetermined hit ratio that a resume must hit in order to pass through the system and get to a real live human being. So it may be that, okay, here's our job description, dump it in. We only want to see the resumes that hit at least 85% of the keywords. And if you don't hit that threshold, you go in the garbage can. The rationale is, HR people may get hundreds of people applying for the same job. So it's an efficiency tool for them, with the premise that if you're not qualified, you won't be using the right keywords. Well, if you don't know that game, and I know enough people that I've worked with that did not know about that, but they just simply were not using the keywords, that can hurt you. And so it's actually leaving some people off to the side. So I'm all about educating people about applicant tracking system or keyword scanning system. So, you should be doing research. Look at multiple target positions in the same vein and see what kinds of keywords or core skill sets they're asking for. And that's what you kind of need to wrap yourself in a nice big fluffy cloud burrito of those keywords, so that you're kind of getting that attraction to your profile. And like LinkedIn, there's a whole separate version of LinkedIn called LinkedIn Recruiter, and that's what they use, the search terms to look for. So if you have your profile all peppered with all these keywords, you're going to have a higher likelihood of being found. So
How do I find those keywords?
oh gosh, that's a good question. I've been writing resumes for 16 years. So as soon as I see a job description, I'm like, okay, keyword. It's easy for me because I do this all the time. But for someone who's trying to figure that out, there are tools out there. I'm trying to think. Well, there's like Job Scan, I think, is one that you can see how your resume stacks up against the predetermined keywords or job description. It visually, I don't know if it still works. It's called Wordle, Wordle, and you can use that and copy and paste the job description in there. And the idea is the more a word is used, the bigger it is. So it's like a visual representation. So, then you know that word is a big keyword because it's been used multiple times. So you better pepper your resume with that. But that may not be I haven't looked at that website for a long time, but there are word cloud things that you can use that will help you start to kind of visually identify what those usages are and what the big ones are.
Yeah, and it would make sense that is a big piece of what you and other people that are in your industry do, right? It's like like you said, that you know the keywords, you know where to look. Yeah. Whereas a layperson like me is going to be hunting and pecking around and trying to guess at it. And that means my resume might not even get looked at, right? Like then it gets eliminated by AI right off the bat.
Right. Yeah. And it could happen two ways too, just so everybody knows. I mean, it could be that you are on a company's portal on their website where you're kind of, typing in the information in their website. So it's like they're doing the intake there. or and so then that goes into kind of their own formatting and their parsing system there, or separately there are other ones that scan your resume, so it's like you may email your resume into the HR department and they run it through the system that way. So it could be either input or just sending the resume and it'll parse. There's different ones that parse each one. There's the thing about keywords, applicant tracking systems, is that they used to be pretty expensive, but the price has gone down a lot. So it's become pretty prevalent even in the small to medium sized companies. It's not just relegated to large companies anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Fascinating. So talk to me, you mentioned before kind of thinking about it in two stages, right? Like the one is landing the interview, right? That's the LinkedIn and the resume. And then once you get the interview, do you need to do a mindset shift? Like, do I need to start thinking about it differently as an applicant?
Well, I always tell people get a little freaked out about interviews. I love interviews. I'm like, bring it on. I love talking to people. And if you kind of change your mindset and think of it as a business meeting or just a discussion and stay focused on the present versus letting your brain wander out into like what the potential outcomes are, that's where people get really hung up, that they're thinking, oh my gosh, I made a mistake in this interview. Game over, man. Turn out the lights, all that kind of stuff.
I'm done. Yeah, that's right.
If you try not to think about the outcome, and I realize there are people out there in very desperate circumstances. So of course this job means everything to them, and the income and can make a difference of whether they have a house or housing or not. But you have to stay focused in the present and make sure that you're finding collaborative ways when you're talking to the interviewer. It's like, well, what's their pain point? And understand, what do you offer that's going to solve that pain point? How are you going to put their mind at ease? What do you bring to the table that's going to help them with what their needs are? So a lot of it is just active listening in an interview, and then finding ways to link what you offer to what their needs are. That's really what it boils down to, and giving specifics too. We talked a little bit about giving some specific examples in your resume about your wins. Well, that's what they want in an interview anyway. So think of the the resume as the pre-interview interview. So you're actually going through it beforehand. And one of my little tricks, I'll just mention this too, is if you have a target interview, go look at that job description for which you applied and take each line and reverse it and make it into a question and say, do I have an example of that? So, they usually have requirements where this position is going to do X, Y, and Z. Okay, well, do I have examples of X, Y, and Z? Okay, what were they and how did the company benefit from my actions in that? We, as resume writers, use a kind of a formula called challenge, action, result. I've heard it called SOAR or STAR approach, but basically you want every win that you discuss has to have those components. Tell the reader a story. We're humans, we like to hear stories. So tell the reader what the challenge it was, what were you facing, what was the opportunity, what was the problem. Then you get into action. What did you actually do to deal with that? And then that last part is the R part is result. What was the measurable outcome to the company? And then if you have challenge, action, result in that respect for each story, then you're getting them hooked because you're giving specific examples. You can't just say, I successfully managed something. That is absolutely useless and fluff. So you have to get down to the brass tacks.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. So how did you get into doing what you do?
Okay, well, I had a little bit of a job change in my end, and my position went away. So I kind of was at a standpoint of like, what do I do in my life? And ironically, I had been a meeting planner, and I met with one of my meeting planning friends, and she told me, I know what you should do. And I said, what? I'm wide open. She said, you should be a resume writer. I'm like, what are you talking about? I had no idea that there was such a field. And I said, okay. And she said her daughter had done it. So I had a little chat with her daughter. And then, so I said to I talked to my husband, and he says, well, if you think you can make a run at it, I'm like, go for it. That was 16 years ago. So, but, anytime you make a shift in your career, you should be immediately figuring out what kinds of professional organizations should you belong to, because you need to understand like what's going on in the industry. How can you gain current and specific job knowledge? And then really the networking's huge too. And so that's what I did. And, I haven't looked back. I just love what I do. And honestly, you think about it, it's a win-win-win situation. You've got clients that are getting the tools that they need to be successful, and I'm obviously earning income, but for me, I'm more motivated by hearing about their successes. For me, that's the best part, is like, yeah, I got the dream job. And the stories I've heard are, there's one story, if I could share it with you, I just was
Sure.
kind of flabbergasted. So I speak a lot, and so that's another part of my business. And so instead of being a meeting planner, I'm a meeting supplier. So I speak for meeting planners. Anyway, so I was at this large conference where I was speaking, and they had the big luncheon. So there was like 3,000 people at the luncheon, and I found a spot that was open. I said, "Can I sit here?" And the gal that was right there, she said, "Oh my gosh, Dawn Rasmussen." I'm like, "Yeah." And she said, "You saved my life." I'm like, "What?" And I saw her name badge, and I realized she had actually been one of my clients, and she was in a horrific job situation where the employer mentally and actually physically abused her, threw her down some steps.
Yikes.
And she was near suicide. But we were able to have a conversation, and we worked together to really refine what her value was. And she started to own her power again, and it gave her enough confidence that she, plus her resume, that she went out and she's like, "I found my dream job. I cannot believe it. You totally changed my life." I'm like, how many people get that? I mean, that's awesome.
I know.
I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but to have that kind of positive impact. And it was what are the odds of me sitting down at a 3,000 person lunch to sit next to her and have this happen?
Right.
It was just crazy.
That's fantastic. Yeah, right. You can't, that's invaluable. I mean, that sort of feedback that you get, and being able to change somebody's life in such a profound way, because you're right. I mean, we put so much into our work, into our jobs, and when that ends, especially if it's on bad terms, I mean, that was horrific. I hope she also got herself a lawyer, but I mean, it's like a professional divorce, right? I mean, it really does
traumatic
affect you personally, not just your income, which is not insignificant, but your own self-worth.
Well, I think I also be interested in just chatting with you too. I get a lot of people like, "I'm in a horrible job. What do I do? I'm sick. I have stomach pains. I'm stressed. My hair's falling out. I hate my job, but I'm afraid to go because the job market out there is scary." And it's just like, I don't know. I've seen enough my life from talking to all my clients that I personally think if there's a situation where it's that bad, that you really have to weigh your mental health and your physical health, and sometimes that you have to walk. And I don't know what your thoughts are
Absolutely.
on that, but and there's so many bad bosses. I mean, they're mostly good bosses, but there's a lot of bad bosses out there. They're just like, I call them Bosszilla.
Right, I love that. Bosszilla.
Yeah.
It's great. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not worth it. And, and the truth is you're going to go at some point anyway, right? I mean, if you're that, emotionally affected at your job, you can't perform well, right? Nobody can. Yeah. So why not leave on your own terms? And that's what, I mean, most of the people who come see us, there are some people who are, we do represent a number of people who are still at work, but most of them are on their way out, or they want to be on their way out. For just kind of the reasons that you outlined, like it's not worth it. And that's why I think it's really empowering to hear about what you do, because, we help people kind of on the, retrospectively, like, okay, this is the employer you left or you're leaving, let's get some justice for you there. But like, really like have that forward looking kind of ability and be like, I'm going to go on and do something better. I'm going to go on. I'm excited about this because I'm going to go on. I'm leaving this terrible job, which I'm handling on the back end, but this is a chance for me to kind of write in wet cement and start over and do something, go somewhere where I'm appreciated.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I personally, back when I was what I like to call a young pup, I was in a job where I got so sick to my stomach that there was a 3-person office. There was the boss, the owner, and then there was a partner, and he and she had formerly been together romantically, and his new current love worked across the hall. and there was this weird love triangle going on, and he had this huge anger problem. Oh my gosh. I mean, literally, I finally left the job because I was so sick from it. He actually was so angry one time. His car was in the shop. I had to drive him to an appointment. I had an old car. He was so angry, he just slammed the car door and broke the window of my car. It was just like,
come on,
and then
Dave,
he got mad
right?
that I told him to pay for it. It's just like, but I found myself so beaten down. I was no longer social with anybody. I had just withdrawn, and I was sick, and it was just like, I never want to go there again. And, it's like, I know a lot of people have that kind of where they're just so beaten down. They're kind of in this little fetal position ball that they just don't know what else to do. And that's like hard, because then, it's even going to be more difficult once you leave that situation. You have to kind of regain your personhood again. It's just insane.
Yeah. No, absolutely. So if somebody, calls you, they're needing some help, like how do you operate? How does it work if somebody comes to you looking for services?
Well, every resume writer's different, but as far as how I work, I like to chat with someone and have a discovery call to see if we're a good fit. And then I like to learn a little bit more about their situation and what their target is. And if they're not very clear, then that's when I tell them they probably should go get some career coaching to figure out what that is. And then once they know, then I can take it and run with it. But they fill out a worksheet, and then we have a 1-hour phone consultation. And if they have an existing resume, I like to take a look at that. So between those 3 data points, then I get writing, and usually I can get a first draft that's 90+% complete within 5 business days. Sorry, 5 business days. And then they get 2 rounds of edits are included that need to be completed in 30 days. But usually the edits are pretty straightforward. And then the final deliverable is a Word document they can edit as well as a PDF. So, kind of from start to finish, it's going to be about a week and a half. I am faster than most resume writers. In fact, I just led a session this past Friday teaching National Resume Writers Association members on how to write more efficiently. So it was very well received, and I think we had like 70 people register, so that was pretty awesome. But
wow. Yeah, that's pretty good.
I'm all about customer service, but for me, I'm a fast writer. It's like anything we do, if everybody has a talent, everybody has a specialty. You can do it in your sleep. And for me, it's like a muscle. The more you do it, the stronger it gets. So for me, writing's it. So I'm already talking to them. Okay, I know what I need to write in this section. And then I go back and polish everything off. So that's kind of how I work. But it's very collaborative.
You do the LinkedIn too? Like the
Yep.
LinkedIn?
I do.
Yeah, okay. Okay. And is that, do you do the resume, complete that, and then move on to LinkedIn? Like if I wanted both of those services, like how would that work?
Yeah, I like to get the resume done first, because I mentioned there are situations where you're applying on LinkedIn and you have to use your LinkedIn profile. So you definitely want your wins that you created in your resume ported over to LinkedIn. But then again, as we mentioned earlier, we need to make sure that we make it more conversational in tone versus the more formal business language of the resume. So it's a little trickier, but we can do it. It's just keep it within professional bounds. But tell a story. That's what it's all about. Social media. So tell a story.
Yeah, got it. So how, if people want to find you, how do they do that?
You can find me on pathfindercareers.com. I've got all my information on there, and you can reach out through my website there, and you can set up an appointment and list all the different investment levels. And, like I said earlier, if it's not me, it might be another resume writer. Just make sure you do some due diligence and check out their credentials and make sure they're not just a one-stop shop or someone who just, set up a shop very temporarily. You want to make sure you get someone who's qualified and professional and acting in your behalf here.
Yeah, that's great. Well, Dawn, this has been very helpful. We'll put all that information in the show notes too for people who are interested, including the book about Thor. So we'll get it all in there.
Yeah, see something else.
Oh man, what a great story.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us, and we'll let you get back to it.
Okay, thanks for having me.
We'll
Talk to you soon.
end it there.